Over the course of dozens of observation sessions and dozens of imaging sessions, I've really gotten my astrophotography dialed in with my Nexstar 6 SE to the point that anytime I post something online, generally I get a comment of, hey, what are you doing to get that quality of picture from such a relatively small telescope? And the problem is there is no one thing that I'm doing that I think is special. It's really just a workflow and it's an attention to detail. And that's what I want to go over tonight is all of those things that I do that I think will get you to, maybe 80% to those best pictures that you see online. To get that perfect picture of Jupiter or Saturn, it's going to require more than what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about what will get you 80% of the way. That next 20% is going to require a filter wheel and a monochrome camera and probably a bigger telescope, definitely a bigger telescope, an atmospheric dispersion corrector, different things that will get you that last 20% that require a lot more time to learn them, a lot more money to invest in them. So this is 80% of perfection with relatively inexpensive equipment. I'm going to take you through the whole process tonight and actually go outside and take some pictures of Jupiter. But what I'm going to do is break this up into 4 sections. The first of which is considerations before you go outside. The second is setting up the telescope and things you need to be aware of there. The third being the actual capturing of the data, taking the pictures. And the fourth is going to be post-processing. To go through all of the details of the process would probably be a 2-hour-long video. I don't want to do that. I am going to gloss over some things that I know have good references online. There's also at least one point where I'm going to reference one of my own videos that I created. Okay, so getting into the before you go outside section. Number one, let's talk about equipment. We're not going to do this with a cheap, $50, $100 telescope that you bought at a sporting goods store. There are a lot of different options when it comes to telescopes. I am a big fan of Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes, 8SE, 6SE, 5SE. You could also go with a Newtonian or a Dobsonian. If you're trying to get to really good astrophotography quickly, I recommend starting out with a Schmidt-Cassegrain, an SCT. On the back of your SCT, I have to recommend a dedicated astrophotography camera. There are other options out there. You will see people taking pictures with their smartphones. Don't do that. You're never going to get a good quality picture with a smartphone. And the other option is you could use a digital SLR. The problem with digital SLRs, my understanding is you don't have the same control over the frame size, and the frame rate isn't as high, and the exposure times. You don't have as much control over all of those things with your typical digital SLR camera. So just invest a few $100s in a dedicated Planetary Astrophotography camera. These are the relatively cheap ones when it comes to astrophotography cameras. If you're going into deep sky type cameras, that's where you can drop a couple thousand on a good camera. That's not the case for planetary cameras. The next consideration is choosing the night that you're going to go out and do your observations. If you are practicing, go out on any night that's clear, that you can see the planets. If you're trying to get a really good image, you really need to monitor the quality of the atmosphere. So obviously cloud cover is one, and transparency, smoke in the air, etc., is another one. But the most critical one that's often overlooked, especially by beginners, is seeing. What we're looking for is minimally you want what's referred to as average seeing. Ideally, you want very good or excellent seeing. And I'm going to show you how I do that. I use an application called Astrospheric, and I've got my phone here, so I'll kind of show you guys what I'm facing here tonight. So you can see right now, completely cloud covered, and I'm in Denver, so we're focused on the center. But you can see as the night goes on here, if I click on, say, 3 a.m., it ends up being a clear spot in the sky, so the clouds are gone. And now we can click over, that's cloud cover. Now we can click over and look at transparency. We're looking for the dark blue areas. That's nice and dark blue. And then we go over to seeing, the seeing button there. And this is maybe the hardest thing to understand, the most critical thing to understand too, and that is how to interpret this information. Along the bottom here, you can see that like at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it's this light blue, which is described as below average. So we don't want to be imaging in below average. But what you can see is on the map above, it's kind of in the middle of below average, and then there's even some above average that's really close by. So just because it says it's below average, because of the proximity of some of those better seeing ratings, I guess, there's a good chance that seeing is going to be good at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. And then as we go to 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., you can see that darker area here, the average seeing, I shouldn't say good, the average seeing has now crept in. And as the night goes on, or as the morning starts, you can see even that above average area, the darker area, is getting closer to Denver. So it's not just about looking at this bar along the bottom, the seeing bar, because a light blue like this, that has some light blue but then some dark blue next to it, is a lot different than a light blue, say, let's go a couple days out. And for this one example, this is Friday morning at 4 a.m. It's almost all light blue, a little bit of dark blue. None of it's really close, and there's none of the above average. So, look at the map more than you just look at the bar along the seeing, in the seeing row here, in the middle of the screen. Now that you've got the rough time frame, and for me, I'm going to say, between 3 a.m. and probably 6 a.m. are going to be my time frame for this exercise. Once you have the time frame, this is when you now choose the target. You don't want to choose the target before you choose your time, because you want to have a target that is high in the sky. I have this rule that nothing good happens below 60 degrees. Nothing good happens below 60 degrees. Now that's a little bit strict, because, for example, Saturn never got above like 48 degrees, I think, this summer at opposition, or this fall at opposition. So, 60 degrees and above is ideal, but sometimes you got to settle for something lower. But the main point that I'm trying to make is you want to image whatever object is out there around that time. I've got this 3 to 6 a.m. range. I'm going to find the object that's going to be up high in that range, and then I want to find the time when it is the highest in that range. And that's when you want to image, because that's when you're shooting through the least amount of atmosphere. And so you'll get the least amount of seeing effects and atmospheric effects. So to do that on this, on Astrospheric, what you're going to do is go down to the astronomical clock. And so I'm looking for the 3 a.m. time frame. So I'm going to just slide this slider over to 3 a.m. And I'm going to look at what objects are high in the sky. So it's Jupiter. Jupiter is at 70 degrees at 3 a.m. So that's really nice. And then as we go on, 4 a.m., 63 degrees, so it's going down, and 5 a.m. I'd rather not get up at 3 a.m. So if I can do something later, I'll take it. Jupiter's at 55 degrees, so it's starting to drop pretty quickly. But it looks like in the morning I can get Jupiter, and if I get out there early enough, I can get it up above, close to 70 degrees. Now, remember, we are going to be fighting with the seeing. Is going to improve throughout the night. So I'm going to want to try to get to that sweet spot where Jupiter maybe isn't quite as high as I'd like it, but it's later in the morning when the seeing is going to improve a little bit. So I'm going to target like 4 to 5 a.m. for when I want to start taking my pictures. You can also use this astronomical clock function to see which objects are going to be high in the sky at what times. This is configurable. I have mine set to be all of the planets plus the sun and the moon. And what you're looking for is where these rings are closest to the edge. So you can see where Jupiter here that we just looked at is really high. It's really close to the edge, like it's at 3 a.m.-ish. And then there's a few things over here at 10 p.m., 10:30, a couple other things are really high. And what are those? The moon's at 74 degrees and Uranus is at 70 degrees. So if the seeing was really good in the evening at 10 or 11 o'clock, we'd be going after the moon or Uranus. And then earlier in the night, if we go over here, it doesn't get that high, but we've got two other objects that are peaking at about 6:30 p.m. And that's Neptune at 48 degrees and Saturn at 46 degrees. So if I was going to do an earlier session, I would be at 6 o'clock. I would be targeting Neptune or Saturn. I wouldn't be going after the moon or Uranus, and definitely not Jupiter. I'm not even sure it would be up by then. So you've got your equipment, you've got your target, and you've got your time frame. Now it's time to go outside. Okay, now we're ready for the setup phase, and as you can see, I've already got the telescope roughly just set up and level. Now, the most important thing to consider here is that the telescope is the temperature of the outside, so that the telescope itself is not changing temperature during your photography session, or when you're trying to collimate, or when you're trying to focus. So I set this out several hours ago. It is 18 degrees Fahrenheit right now, so it's going to take a while for it to get down to that temperature. I checked on my thermometer that I have set up on the telescope itself, and it is at the outside temperature, so we're ready to go on that. The next thing up is going to be alignment, and alignment itself is not super important for planetary photography because you can have the planet moving around in your field of view and still get an excellent picture. Alignment becomes more important for things like focus and collimation when you want to keep that star in the middle of your field of view. If you've got poor alignment, it's going to be moving around and it's going to make those tasks fairly difficult. So we are going to spend some time getting as close to perfect alignment, or at least very good alignment. I've already created a video on how to do perfect alignment with these NextStar mounts, so I'm going to put a link to that. You can go, if you're not comfortable with aligning these things perfectly, go watch that video. I had to move inside because it is really cold out there and my hands are freezing. I've got this USB cable that allows me to do this. You might have Wi-Fi, or you might just have to be outside, but this USB cable is a lifesaver in the winter time. So I've got really good alignment here. You can see the star Pollux is super stable right in the middle of the frame. When we're doing collimation and focus, we're doing this as close as we can to our target object for the night. And so tonight we're looking at Jupiter, and so I am over at Pollux. So Jupiter's here in the sky, Pollux is just a few degrees away. So I'm going to do all of my collimation and all of my focusing on Pollux, then move to Jupiter for my imaging. You're going to have to get perfect focus at this point, and I want to take you through that focusing procedure that I use using SharpCap and the Bahtinov tool in that application. So if we go to Tools, Focus Assistant, Bahtinov Mask, and so you can already see the Bahtinov mask pattern a little bit, but we're going to make some adjustments to gain and exposure and get a good solid Bahtinov pattern there. And those of you that are familiar with Bahtinov masks know that there are these three lines that should bisect the star. And this middle line, this, I guess it's green, should be perfectly between the blue and the red lines. And you can see it's off to the right now. In this tool, that is reflected by the red bars in this bar graph being, in this case, below the center line, 0. We want it to be at 0. So I'm going to move my focuser and try to get that to 0. Now, I'm always going to do my final focus coming at it from the clockwise direction. I got to jump in here really quick and say the focus always has to be approached from the counterclockwise direction with an SCT. And that is because the primary mirror rests on a rod, and when you go counterclockwise, you're pushing the rod, or you're pushing the primary mirror up against gravity. And that's the way you want. You want that pressure from the threads up against the primary mirror. If you approach focus from the clockwise direction, you could leave a little bit of play in that focus, and we don't want that. So if you're approaching it from the counterclockwise direction, pushing against gravity, and you get past focus, go all the way back clockwise, and then approach it again from the counterclockwise direction. Now, throughout this video, you're going to hear me talk about approaching it from the clockwise direction, and that is because, for whatever reason, you might have the same thing, but my Celestron electronic focuser, when I press the clockwise button, it turns the focuser counterclockwise. So I always talk about approaching from the clockwise direction, but trust me, approach it from the counterclockwise direction. What button you press, I don't care, but I'm going to talk about it as clockwise, but it's actually approaching it from the counterclockwise direction. Do that. Okay, so I'm already too far in the counterclockwise, so I can just move in the clockwise direction. And as I move closer to the center on this green line, you can see this bar graph is going up. And I'm also going to want to move my subject here towards the center of the screen because we want to get perfect focus in the middle of the field of view. Okay, you can see I'm still a little bit off. We'll keep moving it in. To zoom in on this bar graph, we're going to hit the reset button. Still at -20. That's really bad focus. We don't want that. So I'm going to keep moving in. And as I move more clockwise on the focuser, it should get closer and closer to 0. And it is. I'm going to zoom in again. I'm going to hit that reset button. So now we're getting into the fine tuning. We're at -10. Still coming up a little bit. Okay, kind of leveled off here around maybe -5 to -10. I'm just going to, I was going to hit the reset button again, but not necessarily. It's still bouncing around quite a bit. That's that variation is going to be due to the seeing. So I'm already not super happy about some of the seeing tonight. This is the first indication that I have that the seeing might not be perfect. I'm going to keep trying to sneak in, hit that focus button to sneak in on this focus. You might be doing this with your hand focuser. If you don't have the electronic focuser, that's fine. Okay, now we're getting really close. I'm going to reset this. Definitely still need more. Give it a couple more button pushes. And I'm going to reset again. Okay, now we're in that -2 range and bouncing up into the positive range. So this is looking like we're getting good on the focus. Maybe still a little bit too negative here. Yep, I'm going to give it one more push. One more button push on the clockwise rotation direction, and we'll see how it settles out. I think this is really good. This is bouncing low, it's bouncing high, but that blue line, which is the average, is right around that 0 line. So this is about as good a focus as I'm going to get tonight. And if I was comfortable with my collimation, then we're good to go. We could start imaging. I am going to go check my collimation though real quick because the temperature has changed drastically since the last time I had my scope out. Just that flexing of the scope with the temperature changes. I'm a little concerned that those screws might have moved slightly, and I've got collimation issues. So I am going to check the collimation, and I'm going to do that with the Bahtinov mask. For the Bahtinov mask, I'm just going to do this visually. So at this point I have the Bahtinov mask installed, and you can see I might be a little bit out of collimation if you're familiar with the Bahtinov mask. I am going to go and try to just tweak this collimation a little bit. I'm not going to take you through that procedure in this video because to do that correctly would take 20 or 30 minutes. And I already have a video on how to get perfect collimation, and I'm going to direct you to that at this time. If you are not comfortable with your collimation, if you do not have perfect collimation, go make sure that you do that. And if you don't know how to do that, watch that video. It's in the description. I'll also link it on the screen here. Okay, the seeing is really variable. You can see that in the focus as it jumps kind of to a +5 and a -5. That's not really good. I'm hoping that it cleans up a little bit here over the next few minutes, but I'm going to say that this is about as good as I'm going to get with collimation and focus. And let's go over to Jupiter and see what it looks like today. Before we go over to Jupiter, I do want to share with you one of the tricks that I use is constant monitoring of the temperature of my telescope. So I installed a probe on the surface of my tube so that it it measures the temperature of the tube, and then I put some insulation over the top of it so it doesn't get corrupted by the temperature of the air. And so these two lines track the air temperature and the tube temperature of my telescope. And that's where it is right now, 17.76 degrees inside, 16.5 outside. And you can see they vary over time. Now, the key is that if these change more than a degree or two, really, if you want to be a perfectionist about this, if it changes more than a degree or two, you're going to go back over to your star, your focus star, and redo the focusing step. Make sure you're still in focus. So my starting point here is 17.76. As I go through my imaging of Jupiter, I'm going to constantly go back to this, make sure temperature hasn't changed significantly. And by that, I mean a degree or two. All right, drum roll. Let's go to Jupiter. And Jupiter's going to be way too bright right now because I've got the gain and everything turned up. And now we're getting into the data collection portion of this and the things that I look out for. So the first thing is, as far as data collection is concerned, on the exposure time, on a bright object like Jupiter, I'm going to want to be at about 5 milliseconds. So I'm going to knock that down to 5 milliseconds. On Saturn, maybe 10 milliseconds. And Venus is going to be, 1 or 2 milliseconds because it's so bright. Mars is going to be in the 10 millisecond or less range. And the reason why we want those really small exposure times is because we're trying to take a picture really quick while the seeing is good for milliseconds at a time, and then move on to the next picture, move on to the next picture. So we're going to keep it down about 5 milliseconds for Jupiter tonight. That's a great shot. You can see all 4 Galilean moons there. I don't know what they all are in this order right now, but you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I don't know if this guy is coming in front of Jupiter or passing behind, but this we could be up for a transit of this moon here if it's coming in front. Okay, now we've got our exposure where we want it, so now we're going to turn the gain down. This will reduce the noise in our final pictures. It's looking pretty good, and you'll notice it's really small. That's because this is a high-resolution camera. We don't need this much resolution in our imaging, and we don't want this much resolution in our imaging. It'll make the camera really slow if we try to capture at 3840 by 2160. So I'm going to turn this down to a much smaller frame size, and I like to do like a 1280 by 720. And we're going to get this back in the middle. So this is not a fabulously stable picture of Jupiter. You can see it kind of comes and goes. I'm looking at this line here on the South Pole, looking to get a sharp line, and it's just not happening. So this is going to be kind of an average to maybe below average seeing right now. I'm going to just kind of hold tight, see if things change. Things can change in a specific night. Over the course of just a few minutes, this could clean up to a really sharp image, or it could deteriorate into something that you can barely tell that it's Jupiter. It looks like it might be sharpening up a bit, and unfortunately, there's no red spot tonight, so it will be somewhat of a boring Jupiter. But let's go ahead and try to get some pictures. You can see very variable. It just deteriorated. The technique for each planet is slightly different. On Jupiter, I really focus on limiting the amount of time I spend taking each set of pictures. And the reason for that is I've found that when I'm taking a video animation of Jupiter, when I take a picture every, say, 60 seconds or 90 seconds, there is a noticeable change in Jupiter's atmosphere from 1 minute to the next minute. Like, you can click between those two images and see that slight rotation. And that's even at, like I said, at 90 seconds. So I want to get that rotation completely out of the possibility of creating blur in my pictures. So I'm going to try to get Jupiter in like 15 to 20 seconds, which means I'm only going to take 2,000 exposures at 10 milliseconds per exposure. Now this camera, you can see the frames per second is going to be about 150 frames per second. So for 2,000 frames, it's going to take something like 15 seconds. Now remember that we did that focus and that collimation on the very center of our field of view. So we do want to keep Jupiter as close to the middle as we can throughout the imaging. So we've got our exposure set at 5 milliseconds. Right now the gain is set at 200, and the way to adjust that gain is to look at your histogram. You want this histogram to be coming in a little bit over halfway. Usually I'm about there right now, maybe 50-60% of the way there. I might turn the gain up just a little bit. But if your picture ends up being a little bit too dark, that can all be fixed in post-processing. I would rather have it too dark than too light, because if it's too light, you're missing some of those subtle details. If it's too dark, you can do what's called stretching the histogram, which will bring those details out. And part of what I'm running into on seeing right now is that Jupiter has come down from its peak. So I'm shooting through more atmosphere. This is where I get into that. I really want to shoot all of these planets at their absolute peak. Jupiter was at 70 degrees earlier, but the setup took a little bit longer than I wanted it to. I didn't get it at the peak that I wanted. And I'm just going to check at what altitude Jupiter is right now. What is that, 55 degrees and falling fast. So it's not ideal, but we should be able to get some decent pictures. Okay, I got Jupiter in the middle. The seeing is really variable right now, but we'll just start the process here. So start capture. I usually just put a target name of what I'm doing and then what lens I have on. I'm just native focal length, so I'll say 1x, and this is with my 6SE. And we'll do 2000 frames, and we'll just say start. And you can see we're at about 150 frames per second, and on the bottom right you can see that we're going up to 2000, and we are done in about 14-15 seconds there. And because I know that the seeing is really variable tonight, what I'm going to do now is just wait a couple minutes and then take another picture. Wait a couple minutes, take another picture. And I'll do this 10 or 20 times here over the course of the next half hour. If I do see a time, I'll kind of just stalk the seeing a little bit, the image. If I do see it clear up, I'll go take a quick 15-second set of exposures. And throughout this 20 or 30 minute process, I am going to check the temperature and see what's going on outside, see if I need to refocus. And you can see that I don't know what happened here, but you can see the outside temperature, the red line has shot up several degrees, and the scope temperature has started to creep up behind it. So we're now at 19.5 degrees. This might be an opportunity here. I'll take a couple more images for a few minutes, but I'll probably go back to Pollux and make sure my focus is good. And you can see the temperature is just continuing to climb. I'm not sure what's going on outside. And it looks like we're a full 2 degrees warmer than when we got focus initially. So at this point, I really want to go back over to Pollux and refocus. But I'll take a couple more pictures of Jupiter here before we do that. Okay, so we're a full 2 degrees warmer than when I initially got focus. So this will be a good test. I'm going to go back to Pollux and let's take a look at our focus and see if 2 degrees made a difference. Now I just shut the door because I have learned previously that an open door with a warm house and a cold outside, that warm air rushing by the telescope can make a difference. That door that I have on the outside was a glass door, so I know there wasn't a lot of air rushing through it, but just to be safe, we'll shut this door. We'll see if the temperature comes back down, but I think that it's just the weather changing a little bit outside. There was a little breeze outside, so I think that might be what's going on. All right, so I have that Bahtinov mask on there, so let's go back up to Pollux and see what's going on. And look at this. This is absolutely incredible. We are significantly out of focus now with 2 degrees of temperature change. Let's just verify that temperature change. It was at 17.76 when I got initial focus. It's now at 20.57. So we're almost 3 degrees difference. But this is what I'm talking about, where this is what 3 degrees of difference does to your focus. So imagine, 2 degrees or 1 degree is also making a difference. This is why I totally stalk the temperature throughout my imaging session. And so we need to fix focus and get back to Jupiter. Looks to be pretty variable again due to the seeing conditions. Man, I would love this to be more stable than bouncing between -2 and +2, but we're going to take what we can get, and this is looking a lot better than what it was. So let's go back over to Jupiter now. So I'm just going to make a mental note that that focus point was at about 20.5 degrees. If it varies more than a degree or two of that from that, I'm going to go back over to Pollux and focus again. I do want to say something quick about this temperature probe install that I've got. I will put a link in the description to this probe that I bought on Amazon. Full disclosure, I'm not super happy with it. It's inexpensive, but what I've found is at times it will just flatline at a specific temperature for maybe half an hour or an hour, which isn't very helpful. And then it'll suddenly start taking temperatures again. And I'll try to restart the temperature probe and nothing seems to work. I bought a second one. It kind of has the same problem. Now, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it works fine. I love it. But before you go out and buy this one, I just want you to know that I have had problems with it. I do want to say something quick about the image controls on the color. I generally keep mine at 50 on the brightness level. You can change that if you want. I haven't played around with it too much. As you change that, you'll have to change your gain. And on the red and blue balance, you can change these. You can slide these. This if you want to take out the red. You can make Jupiter look really silly. But what I'll usually do is try to get that histogram. You can see the red part moves off to the left as you move that slider off to the left. I'll try to get that histogram so they kind of all line up roughly. And this is something that as long as you're not, oversaturating the red, driving it off to the right side of the chart, or the same with the blue, you can adjust these in post-processing. So I just try to collect all the data, get them all kind of lined up. We are really getting into kind of below average seeing conditions now, and with Jupiter getting a little bit lower too. This is not looking good. I'm probably just going to take a couple more pictures and we'll hit the post-processing phase. And now, considering the blur that's being introduced by this poor seeing, it's probably exceeding any blur that I would get over the course of, say, 30 seconds of Jupiter's rotation. So I'm going to take a few more pictures and I'm going to double the amount of frames I catch. So it's going to be 4,000 frames instead of it's been taking 13 seconds to get 2,000. So it's going to be 26 seconds. Not a lot of blur in the atmosphere over the course of 26 seconds. So I should be able to get away with 4,000 frames. And the reason why you want more frames is you can push the processing a little bit more because you'll be able to get more of the noise out of your picture through the stacking phase. Boy, the seeing is really deteriorating. Very blurry. And we know that that's not focus. That's what's nice about this temperature probe is, it has gone up maybe a degree, maybe half a degree. So maybe there's a slight focusing issue. But what's nice about this temperature probe is that this is seeing conditions and not focus conditions. So just touching on my obsession again with temperature and focus, let's just take a look. We did focus at 20.5 degrees roughly before, so we're a degree warmer. Let's go look and see what that 1 degree did to our focus. As expected, 1 degree, you can see we're under focus now. It's not as bad as it was before when we had that 3-degree change, obviously, but even 1 degree now, you can see it changed the focus. So I need to crank this a little bit more clockwise. Okay, we got a new focus point. Let's go and look at Jupiter again. You can see from the view in the telescope that it's getting really blurry. That means the seeing's getting poor and Jupiter's getting lower in the sky, which isn't helpful. It's probably at about 45 degrees right now. Also, you can see the image moves around quite a bit, which means it's getting a little bit breezy outside. Probably has something to do with the seeing as well. So we're just going to end this imaging session right here. And now that we've got the data, we can move on to the processing stage and hopefully pull some good details out of Jupiter and make a really nice picture. I'm back at my desk now and I'm ready for the last part of this process, which is actually processing the data into single images. I had to take some time off there. I had to go to work for the day, but I'm excited to see what we got. A little skeptical because the seeing didn't come out quite as good as I hoped, but hopefully we'll get some pretty good pictures out of this. So this is going to be a 3-step process, and I've got them all lined up at the bottom of my screen. I'm going to start with AutoStakkert 4, and then I'm going to go to RegiStax, and then I'm going to finish with a little bit of fine tuning in GIMP. So the first step is AutoStakkert. So we'll open that. And you can see I took 12 pictures this morning. You can see those last two have a little bit more size to them. Those are the ones that I took 4,000 frames instead of 2,000. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to process all of these. What I'm going to do is run them all individually through AutoStakkert and do a quality estimation and analysis on each one. And I'll show you what that means because I don't want to spend several hours running through 12 different pictures if they all look essentially the same or if one is clearly better. So what I do, I'll just start at the top. So this first one I took at 509, I'll take that and just drag it into AutoStakkert and we'll get that in the forefront. And then I'll just hit the Analyze button. And what that's going to do is give me a quality graph. And what I generally look at is where this line crosses the center point. And it just so happens it crosses at exactly 50% right now. But what this is each one of these lines represents one of the pictures, and the quality of that picture or the sharpness of that picture that AutoStakkert assessed for that picture. And if it were to stack or line all of them up in a row, this is the way that they would be. The best frame would have a quality up here, and the worst frame would have a quality down here. So in this way, you can kind of see if it's if there's more good frames or more poor frames. But as you can see here, it is about 50-50. So what I'm going to do is just start a notepad here, pictures 1 through 12, and I'm going to put a number for where that line crosses the 50% line. So the first one crossed at 50%, so it was 50-50. And you'll see why I'm doing this towards the end after I get through 12, but let's get through 12 really quick. I'm not going to drag you guys through all of them. We'll do the first couple, and then I'll just do the rest of them in fast speed. Okay, here's the second picture. Let's do an analysis on this one. And this one crosses, you can see this quality line crosses not at 50% where the last one did, not quite at 75%. We'll call that about 70%. Okay, let's look at that third one. And you can see this one's really poor. It crosses at about 30%. Analyze the fourth one. That's about 50%. Say number 4 is 50%. And here's the fifth one. Analyze. Again, about 50%. The sixth one, number 7, eighth one, number 9. And then let's get that last one. Okay, so this one's 50%. And with 4,000 frames. So this one's actually pretty good. So just looking at what I have here, so this one looks pretty good. So the 50% of 4,000 frames being above that center line, that translates to, let's just call it 2,000 good frames. And then this 70% of 2,000 frames, that would be, is that 1,400? 1,400 good frames. And then all of the rest of them are lower than that. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to process both of these and see how they come out. So we'll start out with this the second one. So we'll go ahead and reload this second one into AutoStakkert, and I'll take you through how I'm going to do this. We'll go ahead and hit that Analyze button again, and this one should come out in that 70% range. Yep. Okay, so it's crossing over there. And you can take a quick look at my settings, set it to Planet, Dynamic Background. I'll do Automatic Quality Estimation. Reference Frame, I'll do Automatic. I've already done Analyze, so I see the graph here. And then this is where I will choose to stack, depending on what the scene's like. Usually what I do, and I don't know, I need to do more study on this as to what the ideal point in this graph is to say, hey, these are the good frames. What I've found is that if I just take that 50% point, the point where we hit this 50% line, and stack that many frames, it ends up looking pretty good. And so before I said that was about 70%, this might be closer to 65, or I'll just put in that I want to stack the first, we'll say 67%. It's not going to make a difference. If I did this at 65 and 70 and said which one was which, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So I've already spent too much time on that. But that's where you put that. You put it in this one green block up here. And I'm not going to go into all of the functions. Definitely go out on the internet and do some more research on what all these different boxes are and how you might be able to use them. I'm just going to hit the highlights for you guys, or the things that I might do different. Okay, so this normalized stack, I don't have to do that. This is going to be where if I did purposefully underexpose or accidentally underexpose images, this is where normalized stack, we could kind of brighten the image a little bit, stretch the histogram. But I do always press this sharpen button, not because I'm going to actually use the sharpened image, but I do use it as a quick pre-check to make sure that what I'm working with is something that is manageable, that it's going to be a good image. Don't worry about RGB align. We'll do some of that in RegiStax later, and then I just say save in folders. Other than that, I'm not going to drizzle. If you drizzle, it adds pixels to the pictures, adds size to the pictures a little bit. 3, I have not had good luck with. It adds some artifacts to it. 1.5 is okay, but it will multiply the amount of time it takes to do the processing by about 5x, if not 10x. And so I'm just going to keep it at off, keep a relatively small picture going here. On this side, what we're going to do is set alignment points. You don't want to have too big of alignment points. Like if I say 200 and say place AP grid, it didn't even find one because 200 is too big. So let's go down to like 32. Okay, so 32, and I also have this multi-scale set that will put a variety of different sizes of alignment points on here. And you can see this particular selection of 32 ended up with 79 alignment points. I do try to keep it over 100, kind of in the 100 to 200 range. So I'm going to go just one smaller on the alignment points to get a few more. Okay, now I'm at 161, so we'll keep that. And then I don't know if you have to do this, but that moon that was off to the left, you can see it here and it didn't put an alignment point on there. I'm just going to click it once to put an alignment point on there. And that's it. I leave everything else the same. You can take a look at those settings, take a look at these settings. And then once we have all this, we can hit the stack button, and that will create our stacked image. And that will be it for AutoStakkert. And this will be relatively quick. Okay, it is finished. I can go over to my folder where I was working in. go to this AutoStakkert. This is percentage 67 is what the P67 stands for. That's stacking 67% of the frames. So this one that ends in _CONV, this is the sharpened version of the image. This is just for me to look at and see kind of a quick pass if this is a good shot or not. What we're actually going to work with is the raw TIFF, not the CONV file. Just to show you what I'm talking about, we'll look at that CONV file, see what we're dealing with. And it looks pretty good. Considering what we were dealing with, you could see the moon off there, and you could see some of the details of Jupiter, but this is not a final image by any stretch, and that's where we're going to need to go to RegiStax. That, for an AutoStakkert sharpened picture, was pretty good. It's not the best I've seen, but that's pretty good. So I'm hopeful about this image. And that was the last one. That was this one. So we'll go ahead and drag that over. And if we recall, it should be about a 50% on the analysis. Okay, right in there, 50. So I'll go ahead and change this to 50%. As you're going through and going from picture to picture, do make sure that you reset the alignment points each time, just because the planet might have changed its look a little bit. The moon might have moved a little bit. So we'll go ahead and say place AP grid again. And we'll put one on the moon if I can see it there. I think it's right there. And we will go ahead and stack this one. Okay, and while that was off processing, I did look to see what moon that was. That's the moon Io, and it is going away from the planet. It had passed behind Jupiter, and it had just popped out from behind Jupiter about an hour before, so we just missed that event. Okay, so we've got that one processed. Now let's go look at that one too. It's going to be in a different folder because it's a different percentage. And let's just get the sneak preview of the sharpened file. That one looks pretty good too. So, like I was saying, you can't really tell the difference. So let me just put these two side by side so you can see what I'm talking about. If I wanted to choose one right now, I would say this one on the left's a little bit sharper. You can see the moon's a little brighter and a little bit more round, but we might go ahead and process both of these. But I'm really going to concentrate on this one because this one does look like it's going to come out to be the best. Okay, so let's get rid of these and let's go to RegiStax. Just going to open that. So that first tool, AutoStakkert, does the stacking. And now this tool, RegiStax, does a lot of things, but really I'm just going to use it for wavelet sharpening, which is pretty powerful. So I just dragged not the CONV file, not the sharpen file, but the base file that came out of AutoStakkert. I dragged that into RegiStax. And let's get that up here. And this is where we're going to sharpen and denoise wavelets to really sharpen up this picture. And for a smaller image like this, I didn't use any Barlows. It's the smaller scope, so it's kind of hard to see. So I will often throw the zoom on there. It's a lot more helpful if, like, I can zoom on the great red spot or some detail. We'll just focus on this little darker band that's along the top of the South Pole region. Okay, and as we slide these right and left, you can see the image will sharpen up. Hopefully you could see that there. If I slide that all the way over to the right, now that that darker band there becomes a lot clearer. And you can do that for each one of these. And if you do it too much, you can see it becomes a little bit noisy. Now we're starting to get noise in here. And within this, you can do, less of a percentage. This is 100%, go to 75%. But if you want to push it a little bit more, the sharpening, you can change the 0.1 to 0.2. And now you can see that it really got sharp and it really brought out some details, but it also introduced some noise. And so at this point, you might want to hit the denoise a little bit and throw a 0.1 on denoise. And maybe lower these. And this becomes a little bit of personal preference on how much noise you're willing to deal with versus the sharpness of it. So this takes quite a bit of practice to figure out where to put each one of these dials and how to set the sharpen number and the denoise number. And it's going to be different from night to night, from target to target. It's going to be a different set of settings that you use. So what I'm going to tell you guys is, as you go through each of your first, say, 20 imaging sessions, that once you really dial in what settings you want and what you're happy with, that you save that scheme. And then once you save 10, 15, 20 of them, like I do here, if I click on this available schemes, you can see I have probably 20 different schemes on here. Those were my first 20 imaging sessions, and every time I saved it, I would say Jupiter, average seeing, number 1, number 2, number 3, night 1, night 2, night 3. And then, Jupiter in the daytime. Different targets, different settings. They're all very different. But what this allows me to do now is, now that I've got 20 different kind of canned settings, I don't have to mess around with those sliders to try to find the right setting. The right setting is going to be one of these 20. And if it's not one of these 20, maybe I can tweak it a little bit. But generally what I do at this point is I just go over to my settings or my available schemes, and I just start clicking through them. And this is the point that you guys got to get to, is being able to just click through available schemes. It makes the process go a lot faster. We'll just go through them. This heavy moon. This one's introduced a lot of noise. I don't really like that one. So we'll just keep going down here. ISS daytime. Too subtle, right? It didn't really even bring out much detail. And so I'll just keep scrolling through these until I find one that I like. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of detail on Jupiter right now, so I can't really focus on one thing that's getting brought out. This one that's really over processed. You can kind of see that blue storm right here, and maybe that's what I need to be looking for. And this black band and this or dark brown band and this blue storm are the things that I want to look for, but not quite to this level of processing. So we'll keep scrolling through. There's another one that's over processed. That one looks okay, a little under processed. So I'm just going to scroll through these. Jupiter Strong actually looks pretty good. Personal preference. This one's a little noisy, but I do like it. Jupiter Subtle 1. That one looks nice. Mars. Okay. I might go back to Mars. You can see this one didn't introduce too much noise, and you can see this blue storm and this black band. Okay, but we'll keep going through these. And that's the end. Okay, so I've gone through them all. I think I liked Mars the best. This one looks pretty good. So I'm going to go with this one. We'll go ahead and close the zoom window. At this point, I'm going to do two things. The first of which is I'm going to rotate the image so that it's North Pole up, South Pole down. And we do that with the flip and rotate. That looks about level right there. So we'll go with that. The other thing I like to do is I'll hit this RGB balance and just see what it does with it. Sometimes it really corrects the colors nicely. Sometimes it completely gobbles them up, or garbles them up. So I'll go ahead and hit the auto balance here. Yeah, this is a case where it just garbled it up. I'm really not sure why it does that. Like I said, sometimes it really cleans up the colors well, other times not so much. So I'll just hit the reset button there, make that go away. And we'll go ahead and close that one. And that's all I'm going to do in this tool. So I'm going to say do all. You got to say do all before you save the image. If you do save the image before you do all, then it'll ask you if you want to do all, which you do. And that looks really good. And I/O really popped after we processed it through RegiStax. So that's a pretty good picture. I'm going to go ahead and save that one. And we'll save it as a TIFF, less loss on the quality. We don't want to start saving stuff as JPEGs yet. And I'll just save it as Regi. So we've got our two best looking pictures right now. And let's take those over to GIMP. I'm going to go ahead and close RegiStax. I'm going to close AutoStakkert, and let's open GIMP. Okay, let's open the one that I liked better first. That was the regi.tiff in the 50% file. Double click on that to open it. And so just a couple things we need to do to clean up. So if you notice, the background is not quite black. This is black, and this is a little bit purple. It's not the darkest of blacks. So to fix that, we're going to go over to Colors and Levels. And we're just going to move the black point over to the right. Usually what I do is I'll hit the eyedropper, and that says, identify where on the screen is black. And so I'll click here to call it black, but that'll extend it just a little too much. I don't know if you could see that. Let me click it back. There, you can see it started to infringe a little bit on Jupiter when I say, hey, this is black right here. 1, 2, 3, go. So I usually back that off a little bit. So it defaulted to 7.5. I might go to 5 instead of 7.5. If I say 5 and then press return. Okay, so that darkened up the back nicely. And then this is where we can pull the white a little bit into to brighten up some of the whites if we want to. You just take this and slide it over to the left. You can see it brightens up. You can totally oversaturate it. But this is where, because we collected the data and we only stretched the histogram to like 50 to 60% of the way, we do have a little room here where we can brighten it up if we want to. I typically like to keep it a little bit darker because it keeps the image a little bit more detailed, but I will move this just a little to the left to make those whites pop out a little bit more. So we'll just do like a 90. Let's kind of just do a 92-ish in here. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Now we need to do two other things. I'll say okay to this. The next thing we need to do is remove this artifact from the rotation. And a lot of times we could just crop this down because we're going to crop it anyway. But I'll just show you how to remove these artifact lines from RegiStax. And it's just with the clone tool. So here, you just click on clone. I'm just going to use the default settings here. What you do is, you can read down there, it says control click to set a clone source. So I'm just going to have it clone this. So I'm going to say control click. And so now once I drag up here, once I click and drag, it's just going to clone this as I move along. And I can just kind of make that line go away. We'll do the same thing here. Control click, and then we'll make this one go away. Same here, control click, little artifact there, we'll control click, get rid of that, and control click, and we'll get rid of this. Okay, so now that's looking pretty good. The only other thing that I'll often do is just crank that saturation up just a little bit to bring out the colors. And that's just done in saturation. Okay, here we go. Zoomed in a little bit nicer so we can see this. Let's go back to the saturation, and yeah, let's just turn this up a little bit. And sometimes I'll use like a picture from NASA or a picture that I think looks really good to pair up next to mine to kind of match the coloring and the saturation. But in this case, I don't want to go too far. I think that this is getting a little bit too colorful. Probably somewhere I might land here at about 1.2, 1.3. Some might say that's a little oversaturated. Some might say it's overprocessed. This is one of those things that it doesn't matter what you post online. You're probably going to get somebody who doesn't like the way you've processed it. That's fine. Have thick skin. Doesn't matter. As long as you like it, that's good. The only other thing I'll do, especially if I'm going to post it to a Facebook group or share it with somebody, is I will crop it down because, this kind of bothers me. When somebody posts a picture like this in a Facebook group, like it's just so small, and you might as well go ahead and crop that down. So we'll just go ahead and use the crop tool, and I'll typically crop it to something like around here. And that's just drag and drop, and then, or drag that and then press enter. We can put some labels on there. Jupiter from Denver, Colorado, USA. And then I'll usually put like the date, the time, Celestron, Nexstar 6SE. And then I usually put my YouTube channel name or something down here. And so that's really it. This is what I would use as a final picture that I would share with somebody if they said, hey, how'd your imaging session go last night? Or if I wanted to share it to our Colorado Facebook group or whatever the case may be. This picture, I would say, isn't necessarily worthy of me posting anywhere publicly. It is not some of my best work simply because the seeing conditions, once the seeing gets better, we can sharpen this up quite a bit. These lines are more clear. I don't have to process it so much. You can see there is some noise in here from a bit of over processing maybe, but it's pretty good. Nothing to be ashamed of here. And I do like on the moon that on IO there, that it does appear to be fairly round and fairly clear. That's really it for the processing of the data. It's just the matter of going through AutoStakkert, RegiStax, and then GIMP for the fine tuning there at the end. It's really, once you get it dialed in, I would say I can go through that whole process in maybe 10 minutes, depending on, today I did have those 12 pictures that I wanted to go through. So it just takes some processing time. So that might take 10 minutes by itself. But then once you've chosen the picture that you want, going through each of the tools really only takes a few minutes per picture or per tool. And then once you've got in RegiStax those preset configurations, that goes really quickly as well. Hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully you can see that doing an image capture and getting a really good picture isn't just about one or two things. There's a dozen different things that you really need to get right and fine tune and hone your skills at before you can get a really good quality picture out of any equipment that you have. But especially on less expensive equipment like what I'm dealing with a 6SE, you can't really hide behind the aperture at that point. If you've got a large 14-inch telescope or a 20-inch Dobsonian, you might be able to hide a little bit of lack of practice behind the huge aperture. It'll cover for some of those errors that you might make. You can't do that when you've got a 6 or an 8-inch telescope. So it's really critical to follow all of the steps that I mentioned. If you've got questions, leave them in the comments. If I can't answer them, hopefully somebody in the community can. I really appreciate all the input that I get. I end up learning quite a bit from the comments you guys leave. So thanks for watching. Have a great night.